Okay, welcome ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're enjoying day 2 of SDC. Well, dare I say, we have announced quite a few fantastic tricks and treats this Halloween week. And I expect to continue that trend with the insightful conversation that we'll have today. My name is Sachin Shukla. I'm on the business development team here at SmartThings, and I'll be your host for today's panel. So you're all probably familiar with the colossal forecast for the smart home. How we get there on that journey will be full of a number of different paths. Today at SmartThings, we see a lot of success and adoption through hero devices, valuable use cases, relevant channels, all demonstrated by our partners up here on stage with me today. I hope you'll learn how SmartThings as a platform can power viable businesses across a variety of industries and help bring the smart home to the masses. So today we'll explore some of the approaches taken and some of the learnings uncovered by our panelists and their companies as they've built their solutions with SmartThings in their industry. So join me in welcoming these panelists, and let's get started. So Tim, why don't we start off with you? You want to introduce yourself and your company, and we'll just go down the line.
Yeah, sure. I'm Tim McDougall from Billy. Billy is really about helping elderly people stay in their homes for as long as possible. So we built our business on the back of SmartThings. We use the passive sensors that SmartThings provide to collect behavioral information about what's going on in the home. And we share that with family and caregivers to try and help people be better informed and make better care decisions.
Hey guys, Emir Dukic. I'm the CEO of Rabu. Rabu automates Airbnbs on behalf of property owners and guests alike. So I'm sure you guys have all stayed at Airbnbs throughout the world. The big problem with them is that you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. Anything from actually checking in to is the unit going to be clean, whatever the case may be. We utilize smart home technology to automate that as much as possible. So we automate check-in, we automate scheduling cleaners, anything related to running and operating an Airbnb, we automate.
Hi, my name is Jeff Spencer. I am the general manager for the residential line at Acuity Brands, and Acuity is the largest provider of lighting and controls in North America. So we make lighting for everything from indoor, outdoor, industrial, architectural, commercial, all the way down to your homes and apartments. So one of the things that I've been learning while I've been here that's been great is while the developers and folks like these come up with a lot of new applications for SmartThings, they need devices to work on. And one of the key devices, partly kind of a low-hanging fruit, is lighting, because it's in every room of the house. And so we've been talking about a lot of ways that we can kind of collaborate so that we as a leader in lighting can provide something that would be very easy to help continue to lay those tracks for you guys to use for your development.
My name is Frank Ploumen. I'm with Calix. Calix is a market leader in fiber to the premise solutions in North America. And besides building infrastructure and fiber, we also build out a lot of smart home solutions in behalf of our 1,400 service provider customers. And in our business, we see very much a trend of people moving from providing basic connectivity to providing managed Wi-Fi experience to providing the next big thing in a smart home, right? So it's a natural evolution to, I want to manage parental controls, network security, home automation use cases. And it's very much focused around a managed experience for the middle of the bell curve. So the early adopters, like many of you in the room here, they got their smart home gear already, but now how do we get the masses turned on and make it mainstream consumer ready?
Great, thanks for that. So Frank actually kind of segued into my next question. So why don't we work backwards maybe? Can you give us a little bit of the lay of the land in your industry? What problems have arisen that are new that you can solve with IoT and specifically with SmartThings?
So I think if we talk about our industry specific, our industry has gone a little bit through an education, a learning of basically trying to be optimizing whatever investment they put in the home, basically minimize expense in the home, right? Which was the de facto kind of mode of operation. If you ask a carrier, like what do they deploy in your home, and many of you have seen if you get one of these ugly black boxes that typically doesn't quite stand up against consumer-grade needs and so on. So that's where the industry came from, right? Whereas what we see now is what consumer needs are, right, is awesome connectivity, seamless experience, it just needs to work, self-healing, right? So that pivot has been the big challenge in our industry. We've addressed that very much with cloud-managed solutions, right, and putting an execution environment in the home that can collect the right data and then work with a cloud support environment to basically optimize that and streamline that experience. Every carrier that we worked with starts to look at, once they get it and once they see, oh, I can actually do more than cost optimize my internet experience, I can actually charge additional and create additional revenue streams if I do a better job creating an experience. So once people get to that point, they very much get interested in home automation, and they very much ask us as an industry of, okay, guide us, right? The one thing that our industry sees is, we love it, we see all the massive number of announcements and gadgets and things out there, but they're very scared about the operational aspect, right? So most carriers really look at, when they look at, let's say, a home automation solution for lighting or like water sensors, what they see is complexity and help desk calls, right? So how do you manage that? How do you keep that under control? So while I'm providing a value, didn't I just pick up a bigger liability than the value, right? And that balance is super important. Like I was just talking with you there, right? I think that's getting that right in our industry is going to be key to scaling out.
Gotcha. Jeff, what about you and your industry?
So for us, this is kind of the next step in the evolution of really the way we think about lighting. So if we kind of think back about how it's evolved, there was a time back in the late 2000s when the advances in LED technology kind of disrupted our industry, and everybody started going to that because it had longer life and better energy efficiency. But then as the world changed, some new things came to light, no pun intended, like the need for your circadian rhythm, and in fact that it's disrupted by a lot of the technology and other things that are happening, and we can really help to address that with lighting. So now not only do your LED lights allow you to have longer life and a better energy efficiency, but we could also change the color temperature and the intensity of the light to kind of help you with your circadian rhythm so you sleep better at night. And then the next step now is, as the world continues to change with the smart and the connected, it's becoming really just expected. And I mean, I've got 4 kids at home, and I know that the things that we're developing now that are kind of neat are going to be things that they just fully expect. And an analogy I like to use is like power windows. When I was a kid, my parents had a car with power windows, and it was like the coolest option you can get. And now you wouldn't even think about buying a car without power windows. Mm-hmm. And there'll become a day soon that you wouldn't even think about buying a house unless you could change the color temperature of the lights or control them remotely and do a lot of the other things. You wouldn't think about building an apartment building that you couldn't just totally control with the system like Emir's created. It's just going to be the way the world's working, and we just want to make sure that we put, like the theme of the conference here, we want to have tomorrow's devices and offer them today.
Yeah, absolutely. And we spoke before about hero devices and kind of the gateway to smart home, and lighting is all about that. I mean, it's so fundamental to how people live in their homes. And then speaking of homes, I mean, Emir, you're helping people manage and operate their properties. Can you talk about your industry a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So vacation rentals have been around for decades, right? VRBO, but they've been more in vacation destinations, so beach towns, resort towns, mountain towns, and they've operated a certain way. It's 1-week bookings. You directly call the property manager, they book it. You come by their office, you pick up keys, and you go to the home. That's how property management and vacation market has worked to date. Airbnb emerged about 10 years or so ago, and they introduced short-term rentals to more urban markets, so markets like San Jose, like Charlotte, where we're based. And we're now seeing a significant higher demand of travelers, younger travelers, that are going to destinations like Charlotte, Atlanta, San Jose, that want to experience the culture there, and they don't want to stay in a hotel. They prefer to stay in a full home. And they also don't want to go anywhere to actually pick up keys. They want to be able to check in seamlessly. They want to arrive at the home, check in seamlessly, not worry about anything else, and have a certain standard of expectation. But there's a big problem there that we needed to solve as vacation rental or property managers in urban markets. And the only way we could solve that is through IoT devices. And the problem was that we're actually running a geographically dispersed hotel. So we have homes in different areas. We don't have 200 rooms in one building. We have a few homes in certain areas. So we needed to figure out a way to control that and give the guests that access, because we can't have a concierge person waiting for them at the front desk. So the way we solved that was through IoT devices. So smart access, we set duration-based access codes for guests that only work for them during their stay. It's the last 4 digits of their phone number. Any property that they stay at, that's ours. They have the same access code. Same thing with thermostat. They can preset their preferred temperature. So we are giving them the ability to control their home experience wherever they travel in urban markets, which is really cool.
Nice. Tim?
Yeah, I think for us, there's sort of two challenges in the aged care space. I think first is that the industry has traditionally worked in a way that is people-powered. The way that you look after people is to go and physically be there. And of course, there's sort of economic challenges of having someone there all the time, as well as dignity and privacy challenges with that too. I think for us, it was about having solutions that were always on and were passive, and we could understand what was going on in people's homes without physically having to have a body in the room. I think the other challenge of our industry is that in the aged care space, people traditionally have looked for emergencies, so they wait for something to go wrong. Wait for a fall. We've all seen those kind of ads, help I fall and I can't get up. And when we all think about it, it's not a great way to treat an industry. So for us, the challenge is to say, A, how can we always be on? And B, how can we start to see early signs of things rather than waiting for there to be some sort of an emergency event to react to?
Great. And I want to dive into SmartThings particularly, but before we do that, can you guys describe sort of the end-to-end customer experience that you built with SmartThings from a product standpoint? Maybe we start with Tim this time.
Yeah, I guess for us, particularly because of the market that we're going after, we wanted to make sure that our solution was really straightforward. So we've kind of owned, I guess, the experience from the very beginning. We ship out a Billy kit, which happens to have SmartThings sensors in it, but people go right through the Billy app to actually install SmartThings in their home. And so the kind of experience that we're trying to manage for is we're not just solving a technology problem, but we're also helping people have a conversation at the time about why we're actually putting this in your home, what it means, what the implications are for you and for your family. So we've tried to give an experience that's very specific to our niche and to our particular market. But we've found that has helped people take on Billy in a different way. They're thinking about it as solving an outcome rather than just putting technology in the home and thinking about the use case later.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I mean, we know that people don't wake up and just have a problem of not having a smart home, right? They install technology because they want to solve a particular problem, and that's what you're doing and how you're bringing SmartThings to the end customer. I think it's similar in your case too, Emir.
Absolutely. So our primary customers that we serve are actually property investors. So you can make a significantly higher yield or more money off Airbnb than if you had a traditional long-term rental. So our value prop to those customers is we need you, or we ask you to install this certain set of SmartThings compatible hardware inside your home that gives us the ability to remotely control your home on your behalf, to secure access. We don't want people entering the home when they're not supposed to be. We don't want to do lock boxes that any guest can use even after they come and stay. So that's been really powerful. It's been an easy sell. We then connect that to the Airbnb account. And anytime we have an Airbnb reservation or another vacation rental destination or booking channel reservation come in, we're able to set smart rules to that lock or to that thermostat or to that motion sensor, whatever the homeowner decides to do to really automate the experience. And it's been godsend for them and for us.
For us, the user experience is really becoming as vast as the kind of the applications of SmartThings themselves, and as we are a device in the platform now. And in fact, we've designed what we call a design studio in our headquarters in Atlanta, where we have Samsung engineers sitting with our engineers, just figuring out how to integrate all of this technology as quickly as possible, so we can have the best lighting and technology on the market. It starts with there's trends in the industry right now where people want connected, and we kind of have a definition of connected lighting and smart lighting. So a lot of you've probably heard the term smart lighting over the last year or two. The definition that we like to use is connected lighting is lighting that you can control with like Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. Smart lighting is connected lighting that also has artificial intelligence or is connected to a cloud. And so we feel like the smart lighting, the true smart lighting like we can get with this platform is the difference. So instead of just developing our own little Bluetooth ecosystem where you can come in and use an app to turn on your lights instead of a wall switch, we want to put it on this platform so that it's all connected and you can do all the things that really all the developers here are bringing to the table.
Yeah, great.
Okay. So our solution is basically a service delivery platform that lives on a gateway, a residential gateway or a router that sits in the home. And it's connected to the cloud for service providers to do troubleshooting, service enablement, configuration, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the core platform. It's a hardware abstracted platform. It's an OS, if you will. And in the products that we've brought to market now, we've built in a lot of capabilities. So we went to the higher end of the market. Our platform has a modular approach. We dropped in full Amazon Alexa capability. We were the first to get Alexa certified last year in the service provider space. And specifically what we're doing with SmartThings is kind of a similar approach. We're dropping the SmartThings capability in as a wash hub and then abstract all the lower layer interfaces into our routers. So now we can enable for this ecosystem and many of you basically a software-based delivery mechanism. So rather than go to the store, buy a physical hub, we can install that hub as a piece of software on the router that already lives in your home, right? And thereby enable all these vertical use cases.
Very good.
I think that's a really interesting point. One of the challenges for us is, as part of the experience, is we don't want to have to forever reintroduce new technology every single time we want to get a Billy customer on board. And I think some of the discussions we've been having off stage is about the fact that the ability for somebody to say, great, I've used this service, I'm renting out my home, but also I could add Billy to that, or I've already got the router in my home and now I can add lights. I think that's the real power of SmartThings for us, is in the future we see that people already have these devices and we're simply adding on to that rather than starting again with a new system or a new structure.
Yeah, I think it's the power of the platform, right? Yeah. So I think what you guys have done that's really nice is you've built a good broad ecosystem. You've done a nice job in open APIs so people can actually build value on top of that, right? And ultimately what you're solving is, I've been working in this industry for 10, 15 years, in IoT specifically, right? And the frustration that everybody had a few years ago was, okay, we all agreed that Zigbee and Z-Wave were great radios 15 years ago, right? So we all had this assumption that because we standardize on the radios, it will all fall in place. And the reality of what I saw, and I don't know if anyone in the public saw it, I have a stack this high at home with the same Zigbee Z-Wave radios in different plastic boxes, right? Yeah. One talks to ADT, and one talks to my solar panels, and one talks to this, and right? So we've not done a good enough job, and hopefully this platform will help with that, in standardizing the fact, like not only standardizing the radios, but now leveraging a platform that utilizes these radios to really enable different vertical use cases. Right? Because there's no justification for having 10 Zigbee hubs in your home, right? And I think that's the ultimate opportunity that you guys have, and that will create this multiplier effect that once you've bought into the platform, right, there's so much more value that can come. Pick and choose what you like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually that's a great point. So let's talk a little bit more about how you guys in your organizations came to choose SmartThings. Obviously, there are other platforms out there, and you guys are here, and that's fantastic, and we want to support you. For those out there today who are considering SmartThings and trying to build a service in their industry or solution in their industry, can you walk us through what the conversations were like at your companies and how you came to choose SmartThings?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, for us, it actually started before we picked SmartThings. So we actually didn't launch our business for a couple of years after we first came up with the concept. And for us, that was, we're not hardware people. We didn't want to build an IoT platform. That's not what we do. And so we actually waited until we felt like the consumer market had this opportunity in terms of the hardware existing. And SmartThings was one of those providers that came along. At the time, we tested a whole bunch. But ultimately, we found that SmartThings was trying to deliver an open platform that we could build upon, whereas there was others that clearly didn't want to go in that direction. And then I think over time, And I would encourage everybody in this room who's thinking about building a business in this way, we're always playing with all the different platforms that are out there. Like, we're constantly evaluating, and yet in the sort of 4 or 5 years that we've been working with SmartThings, we've never moved away from it, because we found that as our business evolves, SmartThings continues to evolve as well. And that's on reliability, it's on product availability, it's on support from Samsung. So yeah, I think for us, I wouldn't necessarily say only look at SmartThings. I'd say look at everything like we did. But ultimately, we just found this was best fit for purpose for us.
Yeah, our story is very similar. So, initial thought is, can we build our own solution, our own hardware? But we're a small startup. We are not a hardware startup. We don't want to build our own solution. So we tested out probably 10 different platforms throughout a 6-month period, and kept running into different issues, whether it was a closed platform, the hardware was not reliable, batteries died too quickly. There's just countless of issues. And the great thing, the SmartThings, is it was an open platform, has the largest catalog of products that it integrates with, made it very simple for us, and honestly gave us the ability to go to homeowners who already have a Yale lock or an Ecobee thermostat and directly integrate with that, because it's something that's already out in the marketplace. So there was an instant credibility there, because we weren't selling something that they don't know about. We were selling something that's SmartThings. Samsung, it's a big brand that they can relate to, and it creates legitimacy for everything.
Yeah, I mean, 2 things you said that same reason for us. So part of it is that credibility, and so as people come out with these products, it's in our industry kind of stays like the Wild West, and people are going out and they're making claims, and they're kind of doing some things off on their own, and nobody really knows where it's going to end up. And what people, particularly on the residential, like commercial side, is they don't want to come up with a solution and find out in 2 or 3 years that solution is no longer valid, or it didn't scale the way they expected, or anything like that. We look at the SmartThings platform, and we see, this very large company putting their weight behind, again, I keep calling it laying the tracks, but it's putting into the TVs. And I believe Samsung leads the industry in TVs and appliances and all the other things. And so putting that in there, that's going to have this enormous installed base. And I mean, it's at that point, it's pretty logical. We could develop our own, and then we end up with our own little ecosystem, or we could just tie into this large ecosystem, and then really just kind of leverage our partnership with Samsung to kind of bring our strategies and our product roadmaps together. And I'll tell you, it's been eye-opening this week just to see what the developers are building on that platform. To me, it was the perfect decision before I came here, and now I didn't realize how smart I was when we decided to do it. So.
Should get a badge for that.
I like that. So I actually have built both hardware and software platforms in this space over the last 10, 15 years. I know how hard it is. And I know it's not about the prototype and hooking it up and turning on the light and clicking the button. That was the easy part of it, right? So I have a full appreciation of what it takes to go from a prototype to a full commercial, viable, reliable platform like you guys have done. And after having gone through that once or twice, I said, I'll never, ever do that again in my life. I have enough gray hair as it stands. So why SmartThings? It came down to a lot of the arguments that were already brought up. So I was looking for a partner that was industry hardened, right? So somebody that had already done it and had critical mass. I was looking for a large and healthy ecosystem that would be supported and growing. So clearly you guys are doing a great job there. Mm-hmm. I was looking for APIs on the back end to create unique value like all of you do, right? So in our case, we're focusing a lot on the integration for service providers to support functions and so on. So I needed something that was open enough. Right? And then the last thing that I started to learn is so even if you had all that stuff in-house or with a white labeled partner or whatever have you, right? There was this philosophical discussion I ended up in working it through with my customers and end consumers. It was that if you bring a complete proprietary solution to a customer and you're asking them to go spend a good chunk of money on sensoring up your home, right? Consumers tend to see that as a barrier to entry, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas if you leverage a well-established ecosystem out there, right, where you're building value on top of something, they don't see it as I'm building or I need to invest X amount of dollars just to enable your solution. They see it as I've already done a core investment, I just need a few incremental pieces, mm-hmm. right? And it makes, from a consumer point of view, it's one thing to ask you to go spend $300 on gear that is multi-purpose and has a consumer value and it's brand recognized versus buy $300 of my white labeled stuff and it may or may not work after my use case goes away.
Yep.
Right? So I think that intrinsic value helps a lot in creating the value proposition for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, we run into that use case quite a bit. You know, people, Airbnb, what we do is still somewhat new to them, and when we ask them to install these locks or the thermostat or whatever else the case may be, they have initial pushback, but then we do say the same exact thing. It's something that you'll be able to utilize. It's not tied to our service alone. There's value beyond what we do, and after that, it's an easy sale.
And I think, I mean, the other thing, Emir, you mentioned, should we develop some of this ourselves? I believe that the way to be successful is, you know, everybody has their own core competency. Our core competency is clearly lighting and controls. Samsung has a core competency now with the SmartThings. So if we all leverage our core competencies and put them together, that's going to ultimately give us the best product instead of us trying to kind of do what you do and maybe not quite as well. So.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect point. I mean, you know, we see ourselves as a platform. We want to enable domain experts such as yourselves to go and leverage SmartThings and build, you know, unique solutions that are, you know, purpose-built, in your case, Tim, for specific industries that further, you know, smart home and bring it to the masses. And, you know, I think this is actually a great array of how flexible and scalable SmartThings is, because each one of you has a slightly different way of using SmartThings. So I want to just talk about that a little bit and how you guys thought through that. Clearly, there's a good amount of the end user experience that you had in mind, and I think it goes to show and reflect how flexible, again, the platform is to be able to apply it to your use case. So, I mean, Tim, maybe we'll start with you because yours is probably the furthest from SmartThings, and you know, you've owned the brand and the experience yourself. Can you talk a little bit about how you thought through that and how flexible SmartThings has been for your application?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it at the outset, right? We started with the end consumer goal in mind, which was that we wanted to be able to give family an understanding of what's going on in someone's home. So like if you start with that proposition and you kind of work your way back, we had to think about, well, what are the challenges that we're going to face? And some early things for us was, you know, one of the challenges in our industry is that people ask seniors to wear things or push things or do things differently in their life. And so, you know, one of the first things that we acknowledged was that we wanted our system to be passive. And so then you start, narrowing in on what are the options in terms of passive sensors. That, you know, we started to see SmartThings on that. I think in the way that we work with you, ultimately, I think, you know, we've found other platforms, but they just don't give us the same flexibility. So, you know, what we really want is we want as much data from SmartThings as we can possibly get. We want to know everything that's happening in the home, and we want to be able to use that data in any way that we want. Some platforms offer some access to some data some of the time. And for us, if we're ultimately in kind of the data game, right, that's what we do. We're good at analyzing data in our industry. You know, we pick SmartThings because it is giving us that straight pipe of information. That's really critical to us.
Yeah, for us in hospitality, simplicity is king. Anything from the initial setup of the homes to the guest experience themselves, and Samsung, the SmartThings ecosystem, provided us the best way to do that. You set it up once on our platform, the homeowners are set, we take care of everything else, and then for the guests that are actually arriving and staying in our properties, we're utilizing the hardware that is the most simple to use, most intuitive, and gets people across the board the quickest. You know, the easiest way to check in, the easiest ways to adjust anything. The more in hospitality, the more complexity you add, the more phone calls you'll get, because people are people, and we all are, you know, run into different issues. So it really allowed us, because of the hardware that's available, to provide the simplest solution.
Yeah. So yeah, for us, I guess there's a few things. One is, again, working with Samsung, you talk about flexibility. If we had our choice, we'd probably just take our entire offering and we'd say, let's embed this technology in all of it. So the next best way of doing that is come up with a modular design that we're going to then incorporate. But eventually, if we have it in all of the downlights and the vanities and the step lights and everything that we create, again, it kind of gives you more. It gives you more control of things that you can do. We actually talked about even at an Airbnb, If you're looking for your place, we could actually design, I think Mike was talking about the idea where it could actually flash the light. So when you're driving up to see which one is yours, you could actually push a button that says flash the front porch light so I know which unit is the one I should be going to. So I really think that I'm most excited, not so much about the ideas that we can kind of come up with ourselves, but the ideas that everyone else is going to come up with, and then just make sure we have kind of a seamless solution that is just built into the space, and it's not necessarily a device that you're working with. It's actually the home. It really makes a home a truly smart home at that point.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it before, and I'll elaborate a little bit. I think smart home really takes a village, right? It is very much an ecosystem play, and I know it sounds a bit cliche, but the reality of this stuff is like you're selling solutions. You don't sell devices or appliances. You sell a use case, right? And the use case has multiple touch points across the value chain, right? And the only way to do that efficiently, do it well, is to be having a platform that is fairly flexible and open, right? Because then everybody can insert their own value at the right point, and everybody gets the proper type of return in the value chain, right? So for me, it was very much about that healthy ecosystem approach that I was looking at, as opposed to maybe a wonderful platform that is not as open, right? And then you get friction in the value proposition, right? You start to compete with, like the platform competes with the value-added applications on top of it, right? And that is sooner or later a recipe for disaster, right? Yeah. So the number one question I get from my customers is, we've seen all this big technology in Silicon Valley, we see the big cloud scale companies doing fantastic things, but I don't want to be locked in. Or my customers tell me, I have a Nest thermostat, I have a Ring doorbell, why can't you make both work together? Right? It's stupid, but it's that kind of real world practical feedback that people ask about, right? So they want a platform that says, hey, this is the stuff that's already in my home, make it work.
Yeah. And so, this panel is about scaling businesses with SmartThings. So let's talk a little bit about growth and how Samsung and SmartThings supporting each one of you guys as partners. Obviously we announced a couple big partnerships at the keynote yesterday and showcased you guys. So Jeff, maybe we'll start with you. You represent the biggest lighting manufacturer, now Samsung, huge brand name in consumer electronics. From a go-to-market commercialization perspective, what are you excited about with this partnership with SmartThings and kind of bringing this solution forward in your industry?
Sure. So the way we go to market, we sell through electrical distributors, lighting showrooms, online, through catalogs, national accounts, and one of the things that we see, there's a few things I guess I'm excited about to bring this to market. First of all, just our overall philosophy. The market is like the lighting market is kind of like a product life cycle. There's like the growing parts of it, there's the mature, and there's the declining. LEDs were growing in 2010. They matured around 2017, 18, and now we're seeing just the prices are coming down. So one of the things we have to do is find more value. So every hole in the ceiling that we're filling is not filling the same number of holes, but making a lot less money because your products, the price is coming down. The next big wave of value is the smart and connected technology now. And with that, again, as I mentioned, we're going to completely change the way people think of their lighting. And it's not just, it's really the similarities between smart home and really smartphones. I think they follow a lot of the same path. And there was a time when we all used the rotary phones, and some of you guys on the audience might remember, some don't, but you used a rotary phone and you used to make a phone call. And if you ever went to your younger self and said, hey, someday you're going to pay $1,000 for that phone, and you're going to give it to your 13-year-old daughter to take to school with her, and you're going to buy her a new one every 2 years, and the last thing she's going to do is make a phone call on it. And that's the way we see lighting, is that someday, when we tell my grandkids, I say, those things used to just do nothing but light the room. They're just going to be, it's a whole different world, and the world is changing. So what am I excited about? I think that Samsung, like I said, will help give us the credibility to go out there and quite frankly, change the way we all live. And I've been in the industry for 28 years, and I've never come out with a product that I think is literally going to change the way that we all live in this world.
Yeah. Frank, for you in your industry, when you think about commercialization and going to your customers with SmartThings enabled product, what are you excited about in terms of how Samsung can support you in those business models?
Yeah. So first, I could relate to your story. I worked for Nokia for quite a long time, and they were the king of the $30 phones, right? I remember. So the $1,000 phone took them by a surprise, right? So we all know how that worked for that company not too well. So you're right. We're at transformational changes are coming, right? And for me, what's exciting is I've worked on this technology in different forms and shapes for more than 10 years. And the big struggle we always had is how do you scale it? How do you make it consumer ready, right? And I think what I'm excited about is creating a delivery model now that's going to massively change the take rates, right? We're going to move beyond the early adopters and geeks and make it just mainstream. It's going to show up in your home. You're not going to have to know what a hub is. You're not going to have to show for a white little box at Best Buy on Saturday and know which white box to choose. It's just stuff that's going to show up in your home, and it's all you're going to care about is shopping for use cases. And the rest is just magically going to show up in your house. So I'm excited about that and the partnership with SmartThings. And we announced this publicly at our customer event 2 days ago. So I think we're going to start to see a large uptake, probably somewhere mid-year or so, on just, it's easy now, it's consumer friendly. We can ship a starter kit of sensors. The software already lives in your home. So I think that's exciting.
And Tim, for you guys, again, Billy owns the entire brand experience, but there's a lot of support that, we've provided from technical aspect. Can you talk a little bit about that and how helpful that's been in your experience so far?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that we probably use SmartThings in a way that it wasn't necessarily intended to be used, and we knew that from day one. We were kind of pushing the envelope a little bit, and I think in the last few years we've worked really closely with Samsung to say, here's our particular use case, and here's why we need things to function, or we'd like things to function in a certain way. Sometimes that's working with Samsung team to explain how to get that out of the product. And in other cases, you've actually helped us build new functionality into the SmartThings platform to enable us to do what we want to do, which is something that we could never do on our own. I think somebody said it before, the idea that we could have the R&D budget of Samsung to build hardware, right? Sure. It's fanciful. But I think that's kind of the back end, right? Like that's the support we get to actually make sure our product is everything we want it to be. I think on the other side, Samsung helps us actually avoid conversations we don't need to have. So when we go to a B2B provider, so we go to an aged care company, we know our competitors are going there, maybe a similar size, maybe they're early new companies like us, and they're saying, trust us to build the software and the hardware, and we promise both will work. And back to the core competency thing, we get to go in and say, well, we don't need to talk about the hardware because it's got the Samsung name on it. Sure. That conversation actually doesn't even need to happen. And so that's huge for us because we get to focus on the thing where we think we actually add value. And in so a weird way, Samsung's helping us avoid conversations. And that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the future a little bit. What are you guys most excited about in terms of new features or new devices coming down the pipeline, things that you're hopeful that we'll work on together? Tim, we'll start with you.
Yeah, cool. I think plenty of people in the room would have seen, the vision sensor is a great example that you guys have just been talking about recently. For us in an industry, again, I'm just talking about we're competing against people building their own hardware. And the idea that one of our competitors, like the size of us, would come up with a new device like a vision sensor, it's unlikely to happen. And so our ability to say there's something that's new, that's cutting edge, and we can immediately incorporate it into our business is huge. So I think things like that for us, where Samsung's thinking about new types of sensors and using data in a different way is just, that's probably the most exciting thing for us.
Yeah, same thing for us. The biggest thing for us is to improve operational efficiency so we can drive the highest yield for both the owners we work with and for us internally. And having the opportunity to take advantage of all the new catalog of hardware that's becoming available is really going to allow us to get the most out of that yield. So solve for use cases that were not possible before. That's going to allow us to scale even more than we have to this point. So that's really what we're excited about going forward.
Very good.
And so I mentioned some things I'm excited about with SmartThings, but in general, I talked about, if we could put the whole existing platform on SmartThings, the value that would add and how it could help. But then we also have some new form factors. So one of the things up on the screen, you talked about the Juno AI platform, and that's the new downlight that we're introducing. We're starting with the downlight, but it's going to be a whole platform, kind of the backbone of smart and connected space. And they have JBL speakers, which JBL is also owned by Samsung. But it's got JBL speakers hidden inside, so when you turn the lights on, they're invisible. They have microphones in them. Right now it has Alexa built in, so you can talk to it and you can control your lights. And I've already been talking to Tim. He was talking about, with kind of the elderly care, you could have something in the room that could actually, detect sleep patterns and other things and just do a lot more to it. With what Emir was talking about, you could actually drop in on a property and talk to the person there and welcome them to the property or whatever you want. I mean, it's like I said, it's just going to open a whole new world of ways that you can use the lighting. It's going to eliminate a lot of the clutter and a lot of the other things that are required to do that right now and just put it all, like I said, literally seamlessly in your home.
Cool.
So Jeff, you brought up something interesting, and I related to that as well earlier, and that is you explained the difference between connected and smart, right? And I think that's a very important thing in our industry at large, because I think in the last so many years, we've worked a lot on connected stuff, right? We call it smart home, but a lot of stuff that we've been doing is connecting stuff, right? And the smarts are really only starting to come in now, right? So you could argue that, let's say, just connecting a light bulb and remotely turning it on by itself is not necessarily smart.
Right.
It's connected, right? I've remoted a light switch.
Right.
Right, which has benefits. I can do it remotely. I don't need to be home. That's fine. But where it gets interesting is if I now bring all these pieces of intelligence across ecosystems together, and I can make it truly smart. Right. So I was comparing notes with one of your colleagues at the floor on who had the most apps controlling their home. Right, and we were both pulling up our smartphones, and I had 20, and I think he had 22 apps. Right. So if you think about it, does the Philips app, does the thermostat app, does the this app, and I feel like I'm the monkey in the middle. Right. I got to go to all these different apps and do all the stuff to control my home. Connected for sure, smart, no way, right? I think what I'm excited about is we now have the infrastructure in place and the partnerships and the ability to make it truly smart, right? So now I can start to think of, well, I don't need to necessarily think in individual use cases. You can still do that and you create your value prop, but I can now start to think of well, there's 4 personas living in my home, right? And they each have their patterns and preferences, right? And it touches lighting, and it touches security, and it touches what they do on the internet and parental controls and whatever settings I have, and I can tie it all together. When my daughter comes home, right, I set the parental controls, I open the door lock, I set the lights, I set the thermostat. I can do it all at once. And I can create what I would say is a truly smart home experience, right? Where the home just adapts to the preferences of the personas that live in it and that walk in and out of it, right? And I think that would be impossible without a strong underlying platform.
I think as well, that example of the 22 apps, right? On our side of the fence, that represents 22 different partners that we have to try and integrate with. That represents 22 businesses that we've got to understand what systems and platforms do they use. Do we want to put the effort in? In the example of the lighting, for us to have a discussion about use case and not worry about whether or not we're going to have interoperability between us is it completely changes that, right? Instead of 22 separate conversations, we're just who is going to solve the problem that we want? We know we can connect. We know that we can work together already. That's actually a given, is a real shift for us. That's a no-brainer that that's the way we want to work.
Yep.
Very good. Well, maybe we'll pause there and see if anyone has any questions from the audience. Okay, I guess you guys answered all the questions already. Well, please join me in thanking our panelists today. Thanks for the great conversation, for your time.